Cults don't begin as cults. They begin as answers to unmet human needs. People join not because they are weak-minded, but because they are searching for meaning, belonging, guidance, or purpose. The tragedy is that cults exploit these desires with precision. They offer identity, family, clarity, and slowly replace personal judgment with group-defined truth. The question is not, how could they fall for it? But, why are humans so vulnerable to it? Before modern cults, early sects formed around charismatic mystics, prophets, or visionary figures. These leaders provided sacred wisdom that only insiders possessed. Secrecy strengthened loyalty. Belonging meant access to hidden truth. Even in ancient eras, following a chosen figure created self-worth and meaning. The appeal was not delusion, it was identity. Humans are wired for social connection. When someone lacks community, purpose, or emotional support, they become more susceptible to intense acceptance. Cults don't recruit by ideology, they recruit by affection. The first stage is almost always warmth, smiles, validation, attention. People don't join cults to be controlled, they join to be valued. New recruits are showered with praise and attention, creating a dopamine imprint that associates the group with emotional reward. Compliments, affection, instant friendship, these are psychological adhesives. The target feels chosen, seen, special. The group becomes a source of emotional nourishment. This is a neurochemical trap disguised as love. Once emotional connection is established, the group begins isolating the recruit from outside support, family, friends, coworkers. Outsiders are framed as negative influences or threats. Gradually, the group becomes the primary, even exclusive, source of validation. Without external voices, critical thinking erodes and the group's worldview becomes dominant. Over time, personal beliefs are replaced with group-approved thought. The recruit stops asking, "What do I believe?" and instead asks, "What does the group believe?" Their sense of self merges with collective identity. This shift isn't forced, it's internalized. They sincerely feel they are becoming their true self, even as individuality dissolves. Most cults orbit around a single magnetic personality, confident, prophetic, certain. These leaders project absolute conviction, which attracts those struggling with uncertainty. Followers transfer moral judgment to the leader, believing their insight surpasses ordinary comprehension. Doubt feels like betrayal, not of a person, but of a savior. Cults teach followers to reinterpret experiences through the group's belief system. If something good happens, it's proof the leader is right. If something bad happens, it's a test of faith. Reality is bent to fit the doctrine. This cognitive self-editing is powerful. Members no longer need external control, they police their own thoughts. Extreme demands don't come immediately. They arrive in small steps that seem reasonable in context. A slightly tighter schedule, a firmer rule, a larger commitment. Each change feels small, but over months or years, these incremental shifts produce total behavioral transformation. By the time the demands seem extreme, compliance is already habitual. Jim Jones turned a community of hopeful idealists into an isolated society under total command. Members believed they were building a utopia, until paranoia and absolute loyalty culminated in the mass death of over 900 people. They didn't die because they wanted to. They died because obedience felt inescapable and dissent felt impossible. Cults limit access to external sources of truth. Members are discouraged, or forbidden, from consuming media, speaking to critics, or accessing outside perspectives. This creates a sealed mental environment where the leader's narrative is uncontested. When outside information does slip in, it is framed as lies, propaganda, or spiritual attack. Reality becomes whatever the leader permits. Cult members adopt specialized terms and insider phrases that reframe ordinary concepts. Concepts like purity, mission, or faith take on cult-specific meaning. This linguistic shift alters perception. Words become psychological triggers that maintain loyalty. Shared language deepens identity and separates insiders from unenlightened outsiders. Members are encouraged to reveal their deepest fears, mistakes, and personal histories. This often feels therapeutic, but later becomes leverage. Confession transforms into emotional collateral. Doubt becomes dangerous because the group knows too much. The member believes they are cared for, while the truth is that their weaknesses are cataloged for control. To solidify unity, cults manufacture external antagonists: government agencies, media, critics, ex-members, even family. Opposition becomes proof of truth. If they fear us, we must be right. Members feel heroically embattled, part of a misunderstood elite. This narrative isolates them further and frames persecution as validation, not warning. Over time, members lose external social ties, career skills, financial independence, and personal autonomy. Leaving the group means losing identity, community, meaning, and often practical survival. The cult becomes the only reality where they are accepted, useful, and understood. People don't stay because they are trapped physically, but because their entire world exists inside. Compliance is maintained through psychological threats, fear of exile, divine punishment, emotional abandonment, or identity collapse. The punishments are rarely physical. Psychological fear is far more enduring. Members fear betraying not only the leader but their perceived purpose. Loyalty becomes a survival instinct rather than a choice. Eventually, the leader no longer needs to enforce the rules directly. Members police themselves and each other. Doubt is suppressed automatically. Self-censorship becomes instinctual. The ideology lives inside the mind, functioning like a cognitive operating system. Even if physically separated from the group, the mental framework persists for years. In Heaven's Gate, members believed they were transcending their human existence to join an extraterrestrial higher state. This belief didn't arise from insanity, but from sustained isolation, doctrinal reinforcement, and charismatic authority. They felt privileged to access cosmic truth, and willingly surrendered their autonomy for a promised transformation. Though every cult differs, the warning signs are consistent: charismatic infallible leadership, isolation from external viewpoints, moral absolutism, control of information, pressure to confess, and creation of an enemy narrative. These structures can appear in religious groups, corporations, self-help movements, and even political factions. The architecture is psychological, not spiritual. People join cults out of longing, for purpose, healing, community, or certainty. These motivations are fundamentally human. The tragedy is not stupidity, it is exploitation. What begins as hope is slowly twisted into dependence and obedience. The real question isn't, why did they believe crazy things? But, why do humans crave belonging so intensely? In many cults, members are encouraged to monitor each other, report doubts, and enforce conformity. This decentralizes control. The leader doesn't need to watch everyone, the followers do it for them. Fear of being reported eliminates dissent. The group becomes both family and jailer, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of compliance and silence. Cults instill the belief that followers are flawed or spiritually incomplete without the group. Members internalize guilt, shame, or inadequacy, and thus feel dependent on the leader's guidance for redemption. This psychological imbalance keeps them compliant. Loyalty becomes self-purification, and obedience becomes proof of worthiness. Those who question the doctrine face social shaming, emotional withdrawal, expulsion, or threats of divine consequences. This conditioning links doubt with pain. Eventually, fear becomes anticipatory. Members avoid forbidden thoughts before punishment even occurs. The mind becomes the enforcement mechanism. After years inside a cult, a former life feels distant and unreal. The outside world appears hostile, unsafe, or meaningless. Language, identity, relationships, all are rerouted within the cult ecosystem. Leaving would mean losing everything: social ties, identity, purpose. Escape becomes psychologically more frightening than staying. At advanced stages, members may accept or perform extreme actions: financial exploitation, coerced relationships, or even violence, believing these acts serve a higher purpose. Moral reasoning collapses into obedience-based logic. Personal ethics are traded for mission, sacrifice, destiny. The follower becomes an instrument of ideology. Leaving a cult rarely brings instant freedom. It brings confusion, grief, and identity crisis. Former members face cognitive dissonance, guilt, and the haunting question: how did I believe that? Rebuilding a self takes time, therapy, and new meaningful relationships. Freedom feels raw and disorienting before it feels empowering. Recovery involves reclaiming autonomy. Ex-members must learn to trust themselves again, to make independent judgments, to choose relationships freely, to rediscover personal identity. Gradually, critical thinking returns. Emotional resilience strengthens. The individual awakens from ideological hypnosis. Not all tight-knit belief communities are predatory. The difference lies in whether members retain autonomy, access to outside perspectives, and the right to leave without threat or punishment. A healthy group shares purpose. A cult demands surrender. The line is not always visible, but its psychological effects are unmistakable. Today, cult-like movements form online without formal leaders. Algorithms curate reinforcing content, creating echo chambers of belief. Users feel they've discovered truth, when in fact they've been guided into ideological isolation. This new form of cultism is decentralized, more fluid, more subtle, harder to detect. Cults exploit fundamental human needs: belonging, identity, meaning, by offering certainty at the cost of autonomy. Understanding their mechanics helps protect ourselves and others from manipulation. On this channel, we'll continue dissecting these psychological vulnerabilities, not to judge, but to illuminate. If you're driven to explore the hidden engines of the human mind, follow for the next deep dive.